Thank you for being here with us at our budget Listen and Learn. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us this evening. Talking about budget is one of the most important things that we can do in planning for the upcoming year. A school system's budget is about 88% spent on people. This entire year we have spent listening and learning, and tonight's budget Listen and Learn is a continuation of that we have been spending our time talking with teachers each month, administrators. We've had 3 community Listen and Learns back in November and December. We've had many safety summits this year. We've had faith-based Listen and Learn. We've had realtor Listen and Learn. We've had a pre-K Listen and Learn. I share all that to say to you that we have spent time listening to each and every one of our group of stakeholders, and through those conversations we have gathered what people believe is important to them and the needs of our district, which ultimately are the needs of our children. And this year our budget will have some themes that focus on our board goals and our district focus areas. We have worked this entire year on 5 focus areas, and those are safety and security, recruitment and retention, student achievement, organizational culture and effectiveness, and communication with all stakeholders. Tonight, our Chief Finance Officer, Ms. Terry Smith, is going to present to you some thoughts that our cabinet staff have come to prioritize based on the information we've collected, the needs of the district, the Board of Trustees goals, and the 5 focus areas. And so you'll hear information. She'll do an overview of the budget. She'll talk about the categories of funding that we have, and then ultimately share with you some of those prioritized needs. We welcome tonight, as well as ongoing until June 10th, any feedback that anyone in our viewing audience has they want to share with us who couldn't be with us tonight, and certainly those folks in the audience who will be able to ask questions at the end of the presentation. So Ms. Smith, welcome, and thank you again for being here with us.
Thank you, Dr. Cook. Well, it is my pleasure to present to the community an overview of our preliminary general fund budget for fiscal year 2019-2020. Because we are a political subdivision of the state, we use fund accounting, which is different from what is used in the private sector or in the industry. Fund accounting is an accounting system that is organized on the basis of funds, which separates the revenue that we receive based on the intended purpose for those funds. The district's main operating fund is the general fund, which will be the focus of our presentation tonight. We have special revenue funds that are used to account for specific revenue that is restricted or committed for a specific purpose other than capital projects or debt service. An example of a special revenue fund is Title I or IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The Capital Project Fund accounts for revenue that is restricted or committed for capital outlay purposes. This would include construction or renovation of facilities, equipment acquisition, and other capital assets. The Food Service Fund accounts for all revenue for our food service program, and those funds are restricted for that program. The Debt Service Fund accounts for revenue that is restricted for the repayment of principal and interest payments on our bonds. Finally, we have pupil activity funds that are used to report resources that are held by the school in a custodial capacity on behalf of our students, clubs, and sports. There are 3 sources of revenue that districts receive, and those are the local, state, and federal revenues. Tonight's presentation focuses on the general fund. So what is our general fund? The general fund is our main operating fund, and it accounts for all operating revenues and expenditures for the educational and support programs of the district. The revenue that is reported in the general fund is not restricted for a specific purpose, unlike our other governmental funds. School districts and governmental agencies can only have one general fund. Our general fund budget is the financial plan for the day-to-day operations for the district. The general fund budget must be approved by the board on an annual basis, and the appropriations lapse at June 30th. Our fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30th. Any amendments to the general fund budget must be presented and approved by the Board of Trustees. Our general fund budget relies heavily on the outcome of state legislation. 63% of our current general fund budget comes from state revenue sources. Our largest state revenue source is the Education Finance Act, which contributes to 27% of our current year budget. 37% of our current revenue budget comes from local sources. Our largest source of local funding comes from property taxes. We are limited in the amount of millage that we can increase annually. Because of our local funding comes mostly from property taxes, the district has limited ability to increase its revenue year to year, as we have no ability to increase the revenue that we receive from the state. So what is the Education Finance Act of 1977? That is the largest revenue source that we receive from the state. We also refer to this revenue as the base student cost. The Education Finance Act was enacted in 1977, and the purpose of this act was to ensure that every student in public education receives an equal education opportunity. EFA created a defined minimum program, and it committed the state to fund 70% of that program in the average district. EFA also required school districts to provide their local share of the cost of that defined minimum program. That local share is based on the district's ability to raise revenues from property taxes. For example, this year's base student cost is $2,485. For Rock Hill schools, the state provides 74% of that base student cost, or $1,849. We are required by legislation to fund the difference of 26%, or $636 for a weighted pupil unit. The state portion will increase to 75% for next year of that base student cost, and we will be required to fund 25% of that base student cost. The allocation that districts receive from EFA is based on the base student cost, which is set by the General Assembly annually. The base student cost per student is calculated by using a per weighted pupil unit. Weightings are used to define the minimum educational program for every student based on their specific educational needs. For example, the educational cost for an ESOL student, a gifted and talented student, a student that is visually impaired, or a student that has autism will be higher, so we will receive additional funding for these students. This slide provides you with the history of our base student cost. The blue line represents what the base student cost should be per law. The orange line represents the amount that was actually funded by the state. Since the act was enacted, the base student cost has only been fully funded by the state 9 times. The last year the base student cost was fully funded was in fiscal year 2007-2008. This means that the educational cost for our juniors and seniors in high school has not been fully funded by the state since they were in kindergarten and first grade. The educational cost for our students in kindergarten through 10th grade has not been fully funded by the state for their entire educational experience. In fiscal year 2007-2008, the base student cost was $2,476. For the current fiscal year, the final base student cost is $2,485. This means that there has only been a $9 difference in base student costs from fiscal year 2008 to today. I did receive notification late this afternoon that the base student cost will be $2,487 for next year. Because the state has not fully funded the base student cost, districts have been impacted. This slide shows the amount of funding that our district did not receive from the state for each particular year that's on this slide. The first column shows the fiscal year. The second column represents what the base student cost should be by law, which is determined by the South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office. The third column represents the actual amount that was funded by the state. The fourth column shows the difference between what was actually funded and what that base student cost should have been per law. And the last column represents the amount of the state portion that our district did not receive for that particular year because the base student cost was not fully funded. For next fiscal year, the base student cost should be $3,095. The actual base student cost will be $2,487. That is a difference of $608 per weighted pupil. That difference equates to $10.7 million for the state portion that we would have received additionally if the state fully funded the base student cost. The General Assembly has returned this week to hear the budget conference report and to finalize the state budget. There is one major educational difference between the House version and the Senate version, and that difference is the base student cost. The House version includes a base student cost of $2,467, and the Senate version includes a base student cost of $2,487. We did receive notification late this afternoon, so that base student cost will be $2,487 for next year. This year, the House created a new revenue item called State Aid to Classrooms. It did not create any new funding for school districts. The state collapsed two of our revenue streams, the EFA base student cost and EFA fringe, and renamed it to be State Aid to Classrooms. The House and Senate version also includes an additional $159 million in order to fund a 4% teacher salary increase and a beginning teacher salary of $35,000. Rock Hill School's beginning teacher salary will be 14% above the state minimum teacher salary schedule. The annual salary for a teacher with a bachelor's degree and zero experience will be $39,899. This slide provides you with the history of our operating tax millage. The blue line represents our operating millage, and the orange line represents the county-wide millage. Our county levies 30 mills as a county-wide millage. So one mill automatically goes to York School District 1 as they have the lowest taxable assessed value. The other 29 mills is distributed amongst the 4 districts based on 135th day average daily membership. In fiscal year 2001, the countywide millage was 33, and it dropped to 32 mills the following year. In fiscal year 2007, the countywide millage dropped again to 30 mills, and it has remained 30 mills through today. The district's operating millage has increased only 11 times over the past 19 years. During this same time period, fiscal year 2001 through fiscal year 2019, the base student cost has only been fully funded 3 times. And that was in fiscal year 2006, 2007, and 2008. Next year, we will not be fully funded again by the state. The purpose of the Education Finance Act was to define the minimum program for all public K-12 students, and it committed the state to fund 70% of the cost of that program in the average district. Only 9 times has that base student cost been fully funded. In order for Rock Hill Schools to provide appropriate funding for our students' education, we must look locally for that funding as it is not being funded by the state. This slide shows a comparison of all 4 York County school districts operating tax millage. Our surrounding York school districts have been increasing their operating millage. The millage amounts that are listed on this slide do not include the countywide millage. As you can see from this slide, York 1 and Clover has increased their operating millage every year. Fort Mill has increased their operating millage 10 times since fiscal year 2007. We have raised our operating millage only 7 times during this same time period. Currently, York 1's operating millage is 196.6 mills. Clover's operating millage is 196.8 mills. And Fort Mill's operating millage is 192.2. Our current millage is 159.4 mills. As you can see from this slide, we have not kept pace with our other districts in increasing millage. If our Board of Trustees chooses not to increase millage, then we can never get that revenue back. For next year, our preliminary revenue budget consists of local revenues totaling $61.5 million. Property taxes are estimated at $48.1 million, which includes a 6 mil increase. Currently, our operating millage is 159.4. Next year, we are proposing an operating millage of 165.4. The countywide property taxes generates approximately $8.2 million. Fee in lieu of taxes are estimated at approximately $4.1 million. This is fees received on negotiated contracts in place of property taxes that would have been collected from a taxpayer. Other local revenue, which consists of some miscellaneous revenues and interest earnings, are estimated at $1.1 million. Our preliminary revenue budget consists of state revenue totaling approximately $108 million. State aid to classrooms is estimated at approximately $67 million. This consists of the EFA-based student cost portion, the EFA fringe portion, and the teacher salary increase portion of the state aid to classrooms to fund the 4% teacher increase in the beginning teacher salary of $35,000. State property tax reimbursements are revenue that we receive in lieu of taxes from the state. These are reimbursements due to the residential property tax exemption program that gave tax relief on 100,000 owner-occupied property. This is also reimbursement due to tax exemptions for taxpayers 65 and older, or those taxpayers that are totally or permanently disabled or legally blind. And this also is for the sales tax revenue reimbursement that we receive due to Act 388. This contributes approximately $27 million of our state revenue. The retiree insurance and the PEBA retirement credit offsets the cost incurred by the district for employee retirement, and this contributes $5.2 million of our state revenue. Teacher salary and fringe supplement offsets the costs associated with teacher salary increases and to defray employee benefits cost. This contributes $5.6 million of our state revenue budget. Other state revenue consists of merchant's inventory, manufacturing depreciation, and motor carrier, which represents $2.8 million of our state revenue. To recap, our preliminary revenue budget for next year, our total local revenues are projected to be approximately $61.5 million. Total state revenues are approximately $108 million. We charge indirect costs to our federal grants and to our food service program, and this is estimated to be $575,000 for next year. Our total revenue budget is approximately $170 million, which is a 5.75% increase from current year. This is a pie chart that illustrates our preliminary revenue budget for next year. Local property taxes and other local revenue represents 36.2%. State revenue represents a total 63.5%. Indirect cost represents 0.3%. Our expenditure budget is focused on 3 areas: safety and security, recruitment and retention, and student achievement. These 3 areas are also part of the district's Focus 5 areas. Salaries and benefits, which is the largest portion of our expenditure budget, is projected to be approximately $149 million. Next year's budget includes mandatory items by the state, which are the 4% salary increase for teachers, a 1 year of experience step increase for teachers, a 1% increase in the retirement rate, and we are estimating an increase in the retirement surcharge rate of a 0.5% for next year. Safety and security increases is a safety technician, 2 nurses, and 5 mental health counselors. For recruitment and retention, this consists of a 4% increase and a step increase for all other employees, as well as a 5% increase in our coaching supplements. Student achievement consists of 3 ESE teachers, 6 ESE classroom assistants, 1 physical therapist, and 2 immersion teachers to expand our immersion program. Utilities represents approximately $5 million of our budget. Purchase services represents approximately $11 million. We are currently working with other agencies and partners to secure additional funding for safety and security support. Supplies and equipment represents $4 million of the budget. Other fees and expenditures represent approximately $1 million. Examples of these are expenditures related to school-sponsored or interscholastic student activities and membership dues and fees. Transfers to other funds is $125,000. The district is required to cover a portion of the benefit costs for the district's food service employees. To recap our preliminary expenditure budget, the total expenditure budget is approximately $170 million. Salaries and benefits is approximately $149 million, or 87.5% of our budget. Utilities represents 2.9%. Purchase services is $11 million, or 6.6%. Supplies and equipment is approximately $4 million, or 2.4%. Other fees and expenditures is 0.5%, and transfers to other funds is 0.1% of our budget. This is a pie chart illustrating our expenditure budget. As you can see, salaries and benefits is the largest portion of our budget. Some important dates to share with you. On May 24th, we will be advertising our public hearing notice in the local newspaper. The public hearing presentation will be held on June 10th with board approval on June 24th. So this concludes our presentation tonight. Are there any questions? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The mandatory increases for the salaries,
Yes.
4% and 1% and 0.5%.
Yes.
Now,
Oh.
The question, just repeat the question before you answer.
I'm curious whether those dollars are dollars that the state is going to help you with or give you, or is that all coming out of your pocket here locally?
So the question is on the state mandatory increases, the 4% salary increase and the 1 year experience step increase for teachers, the 1% retirement rate increase and the 0.5% in the estimated surcharge for the retirement, are those funded by the state? They are mostly funded by the state for the 4% salary increase. The 1 year experience step is partially funded because our base student cost has increased to $2,487. So that's a $2 increase from the current year. The 1% retirement rate increase is mostly funded by the state. The other portion has to be funded locally.
Chair, I just have one question. I'm looking at, I understand that the step increase, but what about teachers, would they increase their
It will be. So if they earns master's in 30 and they provide us that documentation from the state, then yes, their salary will be adjusted. Any other questions? Well, I will turn it over to Dr. Cook, and I thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. One of the points I want to make about tonight's presentation to you, as I shared at the beginning, is a compilation of a lot of collection of information, a lot of collection and analysis of monies. I think, and Ms. Smith, correct me if I'm wrong, but of all the items that we collected through our Listen and Learns, that totaled about $16 to $20 million worth of need for our district, for our students, to meet those needs of our students. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so what you saw tonight was a prioritization of the information, of collecting that information to meet the needs of our students. So I hope that you can see that there's a direct correlation of safety and security. You know, our Board of Trustees has a goal for our district that we keep our children, our staff, our families safe. You saw in Ms. Smith's presentation where we're hoping that we add a SRO or security support to each one of our elementary schools, and that is not confirmed yet, and so we may have to go back and do some additional reprioritization of our needs if those opportunities don't come forth. But our board has spoken very clearly to say keep our children safe. Our second item of recruitment and retention, we want to have the most qualified, the best teachers, the best administrators working with our students, the best coaches in on our fields and on our courts working with our children. So you see the emphasis there, and certainly student achievement. We believe that we need to continue our efforts of making sure we've got highly qualified teachers working with our children, reduce some of the class sizes in certain areas of need. But our budget is a direct reflection of the needs for our students that we've heard loud and clearly our Board of Trustees, our community say that we want to make sure. And as the saying goes, look at a person's schedule and where they spend their money, and you'll see their priorities. And what you see tonight, our priorities are in the areas of safety and security, recruitment and retention of teachers and coaches, and student achievement. And so that is a presentation of our budget. Again, we welcome feedback between now and June 10th when it is presented in its final form to our Board of Trustees for additional examination and approval at our board meeting at the end of June. I thank you again for being here and being part of the conversation, and we look forward to any feedback that you have for us. Thank you for being here with us this evening.